Hi guys, um, and welcome to another video. So I felt guided to talk about ego and what happens when we don't take care of our ego. So our ego is telling us constantly all these stories about um, what's proper, what's right, how to be a good human being, um, how to do things so we are able to be seen, and is often overriding or louder than our intuition because we learned it from an early age. Many of us learned it from an early age that we can trust our feelings or our intuition about something, and we have to consider people's opinions and what is safe and what is proper, and what do other people do, and how do other people do things. And um, so many of us learn to really grow that ego. And what happens when we are not taking care of our ego is we and taking care of our ego means checking on our ego, like what is my ego telling me, and how am I supposed to um, what is my ego saying. And ego is basically often something that it's not all negative and it's not all bad. There's definitely a way um, to grow a healthy ego. There's the ego that um, we we want to be seen by others with our gifts and talents and abilities, and I know I'm good at something and I want to put it out, and I want to be seen in a healthy way, and I want to accomplish things in a healthy way. And that is not a bad thing, because if we are here to be of service for humanity, a healthy ego is also really needed to create something. Because I think without an ego, I would not be able to accomplish anything, because I would just feel like, yeah, I don't feel like it, so I'll leave it. It's a healthy way, healthy kind of discipline, or how can we accomplish to be um, to have a healthy, self-disciplined way of doing things and achieving things, right? Because and that's the balance we need to find between creating and being in the flow, and working on things, because it's and enjoying the process, especially as artists or um, yeah, writers or whatever, and understanding that we enjoy the process, and the end product is not necessarily what makes us the most fulfilled, but it's part of the process. And for that, I need a healthy ego to get things done and to achieve things. And with achievements, I will also feel much more aligned, I think. And it's something I have to learn a lot, um, because I need a lot of freedom in my life as well the last couple of years. And that meant to just always do what I feel like doing, always, constantly. And that would not make me really satisfied in the long run. But that's another story. So, what happens when we don't take care of the negative sides of the ego is actually we will grow these stories around us and others. And if we don't look at it once, will keep believing that it's true, that people have to live the way we do, and only that is important, and only money is important, and only a good and fast car is important, and my profession and my title. And um, the more we are the less we are checking on our ego and the story it's creating, that mostly come from fear and a worry of not being enough and being worthy of love and being seen and being validated and achieving or receiving love from others. um, we will basically, I think, be become more disconnected from our intuition when we keep feeding the ego, but also just not checking in with what it is telling us. And then the ego is also often like wearing a mask. Like, the unhealthy ego is telling us, I rather be right than happy. I rather be I don't know, rich and safe instead of fulfilled and joyful. Or I rather do it right than like being perceived as wrong by others, but actually feeling very fulfilled. So the ego has a lot to do, the unhealthy ego has a lot to do with my image and the picture people have of me. And when I get distracted by that, and when I get trapped in that, and I feel overwhelmed by that, or I feel like it's the most important thing, I will start to wear a mask, because only a few people fit into this modern world that is about money and goals and achievements and physical things. And only if you're really like, either you're very robotic or you are away from your intuition, or your soul is elsewhere, and you won't it's really rare that it's like a true fit to hear lots of noises in a city, or live in places that are just not for our higher selves, and like be disconnected from nature and not get sick, you know. All these reasons why people get sick have a lot to do with being disconnected from intuition, from your soul, from your heart. Like, when did you stop singing and dancing and creating and being within nature and playing with puppies and eating like really rich food, right? So the unhealthy ego has a lot to do with us wearing masks in order for us, and us performing in order for us to be seen and validated and like checked off as right and proper, with can be anything, with a fast car or a job where we really work a lot, but the ego can tell us that we're not allowed to take breaks, or the ego can tell us that we are not allowed to explore who we are, or that it's proper to do the way everyone is doing it, you know, whatever that means. Like being married with 30, it's such an ego thing, because it's such a weird concept. Like, let's think about how weird that is. And that's just one example of weirdness for our society and what we think about. But in Germany, for example, it's like you shouldn't have any gaps in your resume. And it's this weird construct of like, what's a gap? What's a gap in my resume? What is a gap? I wasn't dead. I wasn't like, you know, even if I was in hospital or in jail, I experienced things. I mean, like, even, you know, people choose to travel, and we are scared of, and like, and learning things about us, having experiences, meeting people, enjoying life, exploring, going on adventures. And people are scared of having that gap in the resume that is not saying they were productive that time. And that has, from a very early on, that has been the weirdest concept for me personally, because I always thought, like, just because I was not working doesn't mean I was dead or like not breathing. And whenever I breathe, I'm alive, and whenever I'm alive, I learn things, and whenever I learn things, life makes sense to me. And unhealthy ego is us creating a resume, or creating things on paper that look good, that could look fitting and good for others. And good means proper and like you did the right things. And I'm always confused about right, because if we think of right as what society, or what, like, people who live in jail in their minds think what's right, it's like right and wrong is really difficult to, it's like good and bad people. It's really difficult to define. How could you ever define good or bad people? No, not possible. So what happens when we constantly think about what's right instead of what's what's proper, uh, and looks good for others, but internally we're so distracted and so far away and disconnected from our hearts and our souls and what brings us joy. And sometimes it's not that we have to make the hugest or the biggest kind of changes, dropping everything and going to Australia. Sometimes it just means maybe work less and spend more time with your family, or maybe change your job just to another company and feel more aligned with their values. Or but of course, first of all, we have to become aware of those things. So basically, the more we grow the ego and the more disconnected we are from our hearts and our souls, the more we are going to wear masks, the more we are trying to please people, but at the same time we are so far away from people because we're so far away from ourselves and what is actually feeling aligned. And whenever we get distracted and disconnected from our own purpose and soul, we are going to be experiencing sickness, depression, diseases, being tired, being exhausted, being drained. So what happens when we don't check on our ego is we will become sick, and we will become like more and more disconnected from the actual our actual truth and what's in alignment with our hearts and our souls. We will become sick when we keep growing the ego and believing the ego and not checking on the stories we are telling ourselves. Who said I need that car, or who said I need that profession? And many of us get so trapped in that because we fear the judgment of others so much. So when we don't check on the stories our ego is creating, and we now I lost it. Wait. We get more and more disconnected from our truth, and there was something else. Sorry. We will become unhappy and not joyful and disconnected from people. And the more we grow, like the more we're disconnected from our own hearts and souls, but keep feeding the ego, we will also become want other people to live our life. Because I think many people, the more miserable they are and think they have a tough life and nobody is actually approving and giving them validation for how they live, and they think it's the right thing and everyone has to do it their way. Sometimes what can happen is that there's a little bit narcissistic behavior towards others, in terms of everyone has to struggle the way I do, and everyone has to, that might be, I'm not saying it will be, but that might be, if we keep feeding the ego and thinking, I do it right, you know? Because if we're so disconnected from our intuition and our hearts and our souls, we think we are the only, and not living our truth, you know, and that could just make just small changes of going for a long walk and connect with nature, or be with your grandchildren more, or with your kids, or with friends, you know. But if we keep wielding these if we keep wearing that mask of ego and like, I do it right and I have to do it right because I fear other people's judgment so much, and because I fear people's judgment, I'm going to judge others because it protects me of being judged, you know. Before I judge you, you rather judge me first, because then you're safe. You pointed the finger already. So when I start, it's just like, you've already done the work of judging me. And the ego thinks it's doing it right, but the unhealthy ego is also really, really scared of what happens when I listen to my intuition and I listen to my heart, and I feel like I should be working less, or I should put more effort into those relationships, or I don't feel aligned, or I don't feel joyful, and I don't feel like I'm living my purpose. It's super scary. So we rather do it right and consider, and then at the same time, we hope we get approval, because the ego wants to make it right and wants to make it proper. So we hope for approval and validation from others. But we don't usually receive that because people are just so busy with themselves, which is a good thing. And they are not like, they are not obligated in giving you validation and receiving and giving you what you want and what you need. And we become miserable when we keep thinking about others and what they think about us, and how we could be finally proper and loved, right? So but instead we get just more and more distracted from what's actually true for us. And then I think that's also the way how narcissism is born, by being so scared of rejection that we do all the things that are considered proper, and we build our whole image to be liked and to be seen. And when somebody is criticizing us, we can't deal with that. That's typical for narcissists, that they are really, really not able to take criticism, because they build like, they would build this whole like picture or image around them and consider themselves as really grandiose, right? Because of all the things they do to be seen and validated. But they are so convinced, and they are in this whole illusion and vision of how great they are, because of all the things they achieve and they do for their ego. But in reality, they are so disconnected from their hearts and their souls that whenever there's criticism, they are going to just like lose it, and they will attack you right away, or make everyone around them feel bad about themselves, because they are not doing it the way they do it. But that's another story. But if we don't take care of our ego and question the stories it tells us, we will get sick and disconnected from our truth and from our purpose and our soul. And it can lead to narcissism. It doesn't have to, obviously. But checking on our ego is just, if we want to make a decision and we have two voices telling us what to do, you know, there's always this voice of, yeah, but it's not safe. And of course, there is a fine line between our soul and our heart, who wants to do whatever. And there are people who listen to their hearts and their souls, and they just jump and they will be fine, because they trust in the universe and their higher selves and their own wings, right? There's also a way to work with both. Like, And wanting to have safety and stability is not always our ego. Our ego is also wanting to be seen, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? The unhealthy ego is just created when we just consider only the ego and the stories we were told, and never learned to question these stories of what's proper and what's right, and how are you going to be a fine, proper, decent human being that is, and by decent, yeah, I just mean like a proper human being that is seen by and validated by society, because we're doing these like really proper things, working hard and earning lots of money, and then we can buy all these things to make us look cool. And if we never question that, it can get dangerous. There's always, the balance between, oh, my soul is telling me to just go there and be free and become a yoga teacher, and like I don't know, and for sometimes we just jump and it works out, right? And sometimes we can get our ego on board, and or the other voice that's telling us, I want safety and I want stability. There's nothing wrong with that. Key is always to listen to our intentions. Key is always to seek balance and consider all the voices, hopefully just our own mostly, and maybe write it down if you need to make a decision. But yeah, the unhealthy ego is basically, if we don't take care of that, we just get more and more distracted, or go like distance ourselves from soul and heart, and maybe more pure intentions, or maybe more true intentions, or maybe our dreams. And it has a lot to do with how we are perceived and seen by others, and our fear around that. So that is something that the ego has to learn to drop big time. And parts of it, like a lot of that is needs to be released. How we are scared to be seen by others, and so on. And how others see us and consider us as not fitting or fitting. But truth is also, a lot of people don't care. A lot of people, like, I don't look at people being like, they do it right, they do it wrong, they dropped out of uni, so weird. I did it 3 times, so but that's another story. It doesn't matter. But just an example, for you to feel better about yourself. Yeah, anyway, I hope that helped. You can subscribe if you want to, or just leave a comment if you want. And I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much. Much love.